That's an interesting question, because one of the things I like is playing over changes and having lots of chord movement to play over. Um, so I like to have a bit more to sort of play against. So you have to be quite creative over modal sequences. The danger is you kind of peak too soon and then run out of ideas to play. Often you'll hear or see people on YouTube, you'll see people playing on Instagram, and they'll blow all of their best licks kind of in the first 30 seconds, and then they've got nowhere to go. So if it's a long sequence, I think it's good to think about building. I think this is true for any solo. You want to, any sort of long solo, certainly, you want to feel a build. You want to, it's like a conversation. You maybe start off tentatively feeling each other out, and then gradually it begins to flow and, the ideas start to come. So I think the same with improvisation. You maybe start out with some simple ideas and try and connect them together, and try and build a flow, and then gradually sort of up the intensity, the dynamics, maybe the speed, all this sort of thing as it grows. So you get this sort of progression through. And I mean, the difficulty of playing on backing tracks is obviously you don't get that same sense of that you get with a real band, of them building with you and then bringing the dynamic down so you can sort of fade out at the end. But I think it's good to practice that sort of approach that you would for like a proper solo on a gig, of actually sort of building it, getting to a real climax, milking that for a bit, and then gradually sort of building it down towards the end. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. That's what I'd try and do. Dorian's an interesting one. I mean, it's a great scale. I love Dorian. I tend to use the pentatonic scale, generally speaking, as a starting point for pretty much everything. Although, as anyone who knows my playing will know, I'll often get quite jazzy. I think pentatonic scale is a fantastic framework because every note sounds great. And, let me repeat that because it's incredibly important. Every note sounds great in the pentatonic scale. And that's why it's the most useful scale you'll ever learn. So I always like that as a framework. So you can always refer back to it. You can always come back to whatever your ideas are. You always can resolve strongly back to the tonality if you've got a firm idea of where the pentatonic scale shapes are and what you're doing is, what you're doing in relation to them. So I tend to see that as a framework and sort of move out from that. So it can always pull me back. I mean, in terms of Dorian, if you're thinking in terms of the pentatonic scale, then the easy thing to do to get a Dorian sound is to just add the sixth to the pentatonic scale. So if we're in A, that would just be adding the F sharp, wherever you want to put it. So if you've got the basic pentatonic scale, A minor pentatonic, it'll just be a matter of going. Or you can do the sort of Robin 40 kind of thing of replacing the flat seventh with the sixth. Both options are good. But that's a great way of sort of getting into the sound of Dorian. Because one of the difficulties, I think, for guitar players sometimes is moving between pentatonics and sort of 7-note scales, depending the shapes you use as well. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in just the running up and down the shapes or aspect of it. And, there's a lot of notes to get around, and it's hard, at first to find where the good notes are, the notes you can really land on, the notes you can milk, the notes you can bend, the things that are there. So there's a tendency to just sort of run up and down and round without any great sort of creativity. So having something like a framework of the pentatonic scale and knowing how you can move out from that into like the Dorian mode is really helpful. So you can have that. Sorry, I added a ninth in there as well, so apologies. Can give you a sort of a way into that sort of sound world. phrasing, I think, is what separates the great players from the average players. And it's an easy thing to overlook in the kind of quest for technique and, you know, playing faster and getting better and flashier and whatever. But yeah, phrasing, I mean, it was partly the people that I listened to. Guys, I mean, someone like Scott Henderson, who was a big influence on me, he taught at the college I went to. And, you know, I loved him before that anyway, but he's still one of my favorite guitar players. And he's really, really strong on phrasing. There's a brilliant REH video he does all about phrasing, where he absolutely hammers the point home. So someone like him, you know, someone like Robin Ford, if you want to learn about phrasing, he's absolutely the guy to listen to, you know, for sort of touch, tone, feel, taste, and just that ability to make every phrase, however simple, just sound amazing and feel amazing. You know, and often it'll be the simplest thing, but just the placement of the notes, you know, it's just sensational. It just makes it sound extraordinary. So I always tried to be aware of phrasing, or at least, you know, as I grew as a player, and tried to develop it. But I think some things you can do to develop it, firstly, making sure you play with a click or a metronome click or with a drum machine is really helpful. You know, that so you've got rhythm to play against, and not just having it there as a passive element in the background, but actually trying to actively engage with it. So listen, you know, really listen to where you're placing the notes, and try and place those notes in specific places against the groove. So you're really sort of trying to groove with it rather than just play with it in the background. And that goes as well with playing over backing tracks. Again, you know, trying to listen to what's there, listen to what the drums are doing, what the bass are doing, and try and sort of actively play with it. So, you know, you're reacting to it in the way that you're sort of placing the notes. There's also things like just generally using dynamics. I think that's an important part of phrasing as well. Again, that's something Robin Ford is sensational at, that kind of real light and shade that you get, that kind of like this sort of ghosting and then sort of accenting kind of thing. You know, it just brings out so much light and shade in the phrase rather than just kind of going, you know, sort of straight up and down. You're actually, you know, really trying to bring out some notes. It's very much like conversation. Again, you know, this is used a lot when we talk about improvisation, the comparison between that and the way that we speak. But, you know, if you're trying to get a point across, you emphasize, as I just did there, certain phrases, you know, certain words. It's the same with playing, you know, to get the point across, you want to emphasize certain things. And yeah, Robin Ford's great with that. Scott Henderson's great with that. Anyone who phrases well is good with that sort of thing. But it's that thing of, you know, you maybe talk quieter over certain things, you know, and then suddenly you really want to make a point. So you kind of push it through. But yeah, I think that's a really important part of phrasing as well, the sort of dynamics. But yeah, placement. And there's all sorts of exercises you can do to work on it. But certainly for me, as much as anything, it's just being aware of the drums and really trying to play with them and really try and place the notes in specific places. And again, when you practice, if you're doing any sort of technique practice, to again, take the same approach, not just try and keep up with the tempo, not putting it at the fastest you can possibly physically play at, but actually a tempo where you can play at that speed and play with like good time and good feel, you know, so you're not like scrambling to keep up, you're actually sort of really engaging with the groove. So what you're playing, whatever technical pattern you're playing, actually is really sitting, every aspect of it. Because often we'll have things, you know, in any technique kind of practice, you'll have bits of it which are easier than others. So you might sort of speed up on the easy bits and slow down slightly on the harder bits. So it's trying to get that uniformity with what you're playing and making sure it's really sitting with the tempo, with the click, or with the drums. Yeah, it's I mean, practice has taken a bit of a backseat. The busier I've got as a musician, as a working musician, and also, as you get older and you get a family and all these sort of things and other concerns kind of come in. So, I've the feverish practicing of my kind of early years has slightly given way to other concerns. So when I do get a chance to practice, and obviously lockdown has, one of the, I guess, positive elements of lockdown is having more time to spend with one's instrument and work on things. But yeah, things I practice, I mean, I practice technique things and sort of phrasing things. I practice improvising, and in terms of improvising, there's lots of specifics, but one of the things I like to do as well, and I always say this to any students I teach, is don't forget, when with all the specifics you work on, don't forget just to improvise, just to stick a backing track on and blow, because that's ultimately the goal of any sort of improvising practice, is to become a good soloist, good at improvising over sequences. So make sure that as much as anything you do actually improvise over sequences. Don't just practice technique, just practice like specifics. Actually, try and reserve time at the end of any sort of practice schedule to just do some playing without any clear sort of goal. But you can be also systematic about improvising. You can try and work on specific things. So, if you're trying to develop a particular technique, if you're working on your alternate picking, you could set yourself the goal of improvising for, like 3 minutes, picking every note, not doing anything else, just improvising, but with picking. Because, with any technique, one of the challenges is to get it past the point where you're just playing pre-rehearsed things and you can actually improvise with that technique. So doing that sort of thing, you can do the same with legato, you can do the same with, I don't know, economy picking, sweep picking, you can do the same with hybrid picking, any of these things, but actually, put a focus on, right, I'm only going to play with this technique, but I'm just going to try and improvise with it, whatever tempo. So that can be a helpful thing to work on in terms of working on improvising. You can also work on, I mean, there's so many elements. It depends on what you've been practicing. If you're trying to get a particular scale together, and I know your backing tracks are specifically designed for every sort of scale you can imagine. So if you're trying to get a particular scale together, it's a great thing to stick a backing track on. You mentioned Dorian, so stick a Dorian backing track on and try and play within Dorian, then try and pick out some of the sounds of Dorian, try and work on, well, where are the notes? Where's that sixth? Because that's the sound of Dorian. That's what separates it from any other mode. So where is that note and how can I sort of accent that? How does that sound against the harmony? So you can start to get that into your playing, so you can pull out those sort of Dorian sounds. And it's the same with any other mode, with Phrygian, where's that flat second kind of thing. With Lydian, where's that sharp four? Where can I pull it out? You can work on those sort of things. Of course, yeah, I've been trying to build that up over lockdown. It's something I meant to do for ages, and I had occasionally done videos and things on there, very primitive sort of technology, but then you get busy and things happen. But yeah, I've been trying to do more and more of that, because for years and years and years I wrote for guitar magazines, and I had a jazz column in Guitar Techniques magazine for 10, 12 years, something like that. And always enjoyed the analysis aspect of looking at other players. So one of the things I've been doing on my YouTube channel is to look at licks or solos from players that I really like, and not only show you how to play them, but actually talk about where the notes are coming from. So analyze them. I call it how to play it, why it works, and because I think that's a bit lacking in a lot of sort of YouTube content. There's lots of this is how you play it, but not so much of this is why you play these things. And that to me is kind of the interesting thing. So I like that analysis. So yeah, I've been looking at Alan Holdsworth, looking at some Scott Henson, George Benson, Joe Pass, Wayne Krantz, Larry Carlton, Robin Ford, Pat Metheny, to name a few. And yeah, more things coming. Hoping to do. I've done a bit of Chick Corea, but I might do a bit more Chick Corea because I've been listening to him a lot since he died, very sadly. But yeah, and also there's a band that I play with called Shpongle, it's an electronica band, which I've been playing with for sort of 20 years now. And it's kind of sporadic, but we've done a bunch of albums and, you know, toured all around the place, and it's got quite a following. And I've had lots of requests to talk about my guitar playing with them over the years. So I've started doing a sort of sideline of videos looking at some of my playing things from there. So I've just done the first couple of videos on a tune called Dorsal Perception, which is the first tune I ever played with on Shpongle. And, you know, it's a big sort of, I came with the riff and did a big solo on it. So yeah, I've done a couple of videos talking about how I came to do that in the background of the recording, and then showing how to play it, and, you know, talking a bit about it. Same with the solo. And yeah, those have gone down really well, which has been nice. So I'm going to be doing some more of those. So yeah, I'm planning to do a mixture of analysis of different people's playing styles, you know, licks and things, and, you know, maybe some more sort of technique based or ideas based tutorial things, and then, you know, some bits and pieces on Shpongle as well. So it's, yeah, it's a mishmash, but it's fun. I've been enjoying it. I find it quite stimulating. So yeah, check it out. I mean, I never specifically pursued that as a career, but I was always interested in doing it, and I was always, you know, quite versatile. I always tried to play all sorts of different styles of music. And I found, like, gradually I got booked for more and more of that sort of work, just as, you know, I progressed as a musician, the more I kind of did, because I sort of worked up. I started doing, you know, musical theatre shows, and was playing with different artists, and, you know, sort of started working with some different musical directors, started doing, you know, more and more sort of TV work and things, and started doing things with orchestras. And just as a result of it sort of spreading out, you know, you start getting calls to play on things and to play with people. So yeah, it was just a general sort of progression of the career. I think, you know, for people interested in getting into session work, one of the interesting things about session work these days, and this has very much been pushed further down the line by the whole lockdown, is having a decent setup at home so that you can record at home. You know, lots of us do already, but yeah, having a good sort of professional setup where, you know, with a decent mic, so you can do acoustic stuff, and, you know, decent things, you know, whether you use a Kemper or an Axe FX or whatever, or mic and amp, but just get good guitar sounds, so that you can actually record stuff at home. Because a lot of sessions, you know, certainly over lockdown, I was most of the session work that came in for me was remote sessions, you know, doing stuff at home. So yeah, having the ability to do that these days, I think, is super important. But yeah, versatility. You need to be versatile. You know, be able to sort of play different styles. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a virtuoso in different styles, but you have to have an understanding of different styles and different sounds. You know, the ability to sort of conjure up different sounds quickly. I think, you know, you need, I mean, you don't need like 50 different guitars, but you do need a certain amount of equipment. You know, you need the sort of Les Paul Strat, Telecaster, I'm trying to think what else, you know, hollow body, kind of jazzy sort of thing, nylon string, steel string, 12 string acoustic, you know, these sort of things are pretty essential. And yeah, a good amp that works well without noise, you know, pedals, which you know your way around, so you can quickly sort of conjure up sounds. Again, some sort of direct, you know, Kemper type thing, you know, Axe FX, whatever, you know, depending on the circumstances that you're doing the recording in. And yeah, knowing your equipment, reading music, depending on the side of session work you want to get into. I think reading music is super important. I mean, generally as a musician, I think it's super important, because it just opens you up to so many more avenues, because you can still do the gigs where you don't need to read music, but you can also do the gigs where you do need to read music. And most of the work I do is music reading based sort of stuff, you know, including in session work. And it means, you know, the TV, you know, stuff, the, you know, playing on TV shows, but also doing the incidental music for, you know, TV dramas and stuff, and same for movies. You know, any sort of orchestral sessions, any of that sort of stuff, it's all sheet music. So you need to be comfortable with reading music and confident with doing that. So yeah, I'd say those are some of the things which are definitely helpful, and also just being a nice guy. Try not to be a dick. That, I think in every aspect of music, that's hugely important, because there's lots of great players out there. So generally the people who aren't dicks get called more than the people who are. Well, it's going to be interesting to see, as we're sort of gradually making our way out of lockdown, because obviously the music industry shut down overnight, which was very disastrous for lots of us, kind of thing. So, we've all been sort of making our way through this strange world, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it develops. I mean, obviously I want to keep doing this YouTube channel kind of stuff, and I've also got a buy me a coffee page where I have transcriptions and things on there, so I want to keep doing those because I've been enjoying it. It's fun. Hopefully there's some more stuff coming up with Shpongle, and bits and pieces of work are sort of filtering through. There's some orchestral stuff, there's various bits and pieces sort of later in the year, but it's gradually picking up. But yeah, who knows what the future holds. Hopefully lots of work and lots of music. It'd be nice to play with people again. It's nice to play some creative music again, and it's nice to play in front of audiences again. That's the big thing, because I've been out and done sort of, done some TV shows and things during lockdown, but it's all, there's nobody there. So it'd be nice to play to real people.